Bryce Underwood is staying at home in the state of Michigan. Is this the start of the climb back to the top of the college football mountain for the Wolverines? It very well may be step number one in that journey.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Michigan fans, it is good to talk to you once again because over the course and the history of this channel that started in 2021, which was the first season of 3 consecutive Big Ten titles, I've talked a lot of Michigan football. One might say this channel and the growth of this channel might be at least partially due to the success of Michigan football. Now, this year, we haven't talked as much Michigan on this channel because there haven't been a ton of positive things to say about this Wolverines team that is on the brink of bowl eligibility. But this is a program that needed something positive going into the latter stages, the last couple of games of this season, and certainly going into the offseason. And this is that positivity. Having a can't-miss prospect like Bryce Underwood flip from LSU over to Michigan is the momentum that was needed for Michigan. There were some doubts maybe floating around this program, but to be able to get a building block for the future like Underwood, a guy that will succeed, certainly at this level, is the start for Michigan to climb back up the Big Ten ladder and get back into that playoff discussion and get back in that championship level discussion. There is a reason why people view Bryce Underwood maybe as this generation's Vince Young. When you flip on the tape of this kid, you see a lot of that ability to just glide through defenses with the run game. And then when you look at his ability with his arm, with the pass game as well, he's got that big frame certainly to start off with. 6'3.5", 6'4", somewhere between 205 pounds and 210 pounds. He is ready to be a Big Ten, big-time college football starting quarterback. Certainly right now, he's got elite level arm strength. I talked about this with Husan Longstreet last week. He's got that ability to throw it 30 yards on a frozen rope. He's got that ability, I think, better than Longstreet does and better than anybody I've seen in a long time to throw long throws, deep throws, and get it there really quick and get it there on a frozen rope. He's got elite level decision making as well, maturity to go through all of his progressions. Here's what I look at when I look at Bryce Underwood and how we're starting to translate it to Michigan. Michigan has never had a talent like this. They've had a lot of good players, really good. They've maybe even had great players and quarterbacks over their time, but maybe not a ton of great quarterbacks, I should probably say, because when you look at Michigan, J.J. McCarthy, a first-round NFL draft pick, I think that he's going to have success with the Minnesota Vikings when he eventually does get healthy. But you look at maybe the history of Michigan at the quarterback position, you look at Cade McNamara, you look at Shea Patterson, you look at John O'Corn, I don't want to think about that. You look at Wilton Spade, even going further back, you look at guys like Tom Brady, you look at John Navarre, you look at Chad Henne. There have been good quarterbacks, but nothing like this. When you think of Michigan football, what do you think of from an offensive perspective? Smash, smash, smash mentality, running the football, working in play action to be able to hit some passing plays over the top when Michigan has been successful in the Jim Harbaugh era with Sharon Moore as their offensive coordinator. Of course, he's now the head coach of this football program. But when I watch Bryce Underwood on tape, I see a lot of shotgun. I see a lot of 3 receiver sets. I see a lot of 4 receiver sets. I see a lot of spread concepts. I'm very curious if Michigan is going to adapt more to what Bryce is and his skill set, because I think that his skill set maybe fits a little bit better. I think he's going to fit anywhere anywhere he goes. He can run any type of system. I want to make that clear. He's that type of talent. But when I watch him on tape, when you combine his speed and athleticism with his passing ability, and that's what, the high school that he was playing at was certainly putting him into that situation where they can take advantage of all of his skill sets. I'm curious to see if Michigan is going to adapt to that, or if Bryce is going to adapt more to what Michigan has done in the past. Either way, I think it can be successful, but I will say this. If Michigan wants to get the most out of Bryce Underwood, they might incorporate certainly a few more spread concepts going forward. Very interesting to see what Sharon Moore and Kirk Campbell do as well. They've recruited well on the offensive line here these last couple of years. This year, they had this committed before Bryce Underwood flipped his commitment, but they've got a 5-star offensive tackle in Andrew Babaloa for the 2025 class. They got a guy like 4-star offensive tackle Andrew Sprague for the 2024 class. So they've done a good job recruiting. I'm sure they're going to fill in with experienced guys on the offensive line. So I have no fears there. You look at balancing things out in the run game. I think they're going to lose both Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards this season. But you look at a guy like Benjamin Hall, who's been kind of waiting there for a little bit. I think they're excited about him. He's flashed at times when he's had that opportunity for Michigan. Jordan Marshall, a high 4-star kid out of the state of Ohio from last year's class. They're very excited what he can bring to the table. Cole Cabana was a 4-star, certainly as well. I like what they got in the O-line. I like what they got in the run game. But if you're Michigan, you need to step up your game at wide receiver. You need to get better explosive playmakers. Okay, because you look at this past Michigan era, what was it built on under Jim Harbaugh and their success? It was built on great defense, and it was built on a great run game. Now, J.J. McCarthy could certainly make plays down the field, but I think that was more of what J.J. was able to do. I know Roman Wilson was a good player. Cornelius Johnson was a good player over there at wide receiver. But I think the fact of the matter is, if you want to get the most out of Bryce Underwood and you want to reach your ceiling in this 3-year era that you're going to have Bryce on campus, you need to bring in more high-level wide receiver talent. Whether it's via recruiting or whether it's via the transfer portal, that's how you can build certainly a complete offense around this extreme talent that is Bryce Underwood. Now, we would be doing this commentary a disservice if we didn't talk turkey, if we didn't talk about cash, if we didn't talk about money, if we didn't talk about NIL. Michigan and their football staff, whether it's coaches, administration, or collective, they have a clear vision. Spend money, win championships. I talked about it with Kurt Signetti last week. Earlier in the week. I can't remember. It's all being a cloud right now. But either way, when you have the administration and the coaching staff and the collective all on the same page with the same vision, you can be dangerous. Whether you're Indiana or whether you're especially a football blue blood like the University of Michigan, you can have a lot of success. And it's very clear. Michigan is bought in financially to put a championship-level football team on the field in the years to come at the Big House at Michigan Stadium. Now, when you look at the money perspective, that I'm sure being at home certainly has something to do with this as well, but look at what LSU has been over the last 5 years. 2 Heisman Trophy winners. Joe Burrow in 2019, last year in 2023, Jaden Daniels. Those are 2 guys that are starting for NFL franchises and that are cornerstones of the Washington Commanders and the Cincinnati Bengals. That Heisman Trophy winner last year, he did that under Brian Kelly, the current coaching staff. For Michigan to be able to pull this off from a financial level and a recruiting and a pitch perspective says something about the package, certainly, that they put together. It was reported that LSU offered about $1.5 million in NIL annually. It was reported a couple of weeks ago by CBS Sports. Michigan was willing to spend in the $10-ish million range as a whole over the course of his time at Michigan. So they were prepared. They were ready to sell out for Bryce Underwood. You have to wonder on the backside of that, Okay, how much more NIL do they have to spend on some of these maybe big-time transfers that they can bring in to Michigan next season? That is certainly something that popped into my head. We'll see if this Wolverine collective can continue on the right track where they can continue to raise money and bring in high-level talent, because as I said before, it's all about surrounding Bryce Underwood with this talent to get the most out of his talent. And when we talk about money, it's all about that return on investment. It's very clear, the administration, the coaching staff, the collective are saying, we're going to spend money to get higher level talent on this roster in this stadium. Now it's up to Sharon Moore. Now it's up to Kirk Campbell. Now it's up to this coaching staff. And I think the jury is still out on the coaching staff and just how good of a staff they can be. And can they develop at the same level that Jim Harbaugh was able to develop some of his teams as well? Because now you got the talent. And I think that Michigan has an eye on bringing higher level of recruiting classes, higher level of talent, spending more money than they did in the Jim Harbaugh era. When you look at Harbaugh and what he was able to do from a recruiting perspective, he was able to bring in top 15 classes. They would get towards the top 10. But right now, Michigan, after the Bryce Underwood flip, is sitting at number 8 in the On3 rankings. They're sitting at number 9 in the 24/7 rankings. And if you believe some rumors that are floating out there, that could certainly rise up with some of these flips that want to play alongside Bryce Underwood. The statement from this flip is very clear. Michigan does not plan on being a 6-win team or a 7-win team for very long. They intend to get back to the top of the Big Ten ladder and the top of the college football mountain and compete for playoff spots and compete for playoff wins and compete for championships certainly down the road. So that's the perspective from the view in Ann Arbor, Michigan. What about the view from a little bit higher at the Big Ten level? I brought this up last week on Twitter and I posted onto the YouTube community page, and now it has come to fruition. When you look at the 2025 quarterback class, 4 out of the top 5 quarterbacks in this 2025 class in the country are committed to Big Ten schools. I have it up on a graphic for those of you on YouTube. For those of you on podcast, I'll certainly recite it out if you're not following recruiting ultra closely. Of course, we got Bryce Underwood flipping from LSU to Michigan. That's what we spent the last however long talking about from the Michigan perspective. Tavian St. Clair, very talented kid. Very talented kid. He's committed to Ohio State. So you've got a local Michigan kid committed as the number 1 quarterback in the country to Michigan. You got a local Ohio kid committed to Ohio State there at number 2. You got Keelan Russell, who's committed to Alabama at number 3. We talked about this last week. Husan Longstreet flipping from Texas A&M over to his hometown squad in Southern California of the USC Trojans. And then you've got Malik Washington sitting there committed to Maryland. All of these guys in Big Ten country are in Big Ten markets close to their schools. So they're all staying at home, which I'm sure has something to do with it to a certain extent, but there's also something else that needs to be brought up. I think NIL has leveled the playing field, and all of the money now flowing around college football is above the table. Whereas before, you might have had some of that Southern money below the table and in the McDonald's bag that gave them a little bit of an advantage to get these type of prospects onto their campus. I'm a viewer of Kings of the North. I love what Doug Lemarice and Bill Landis do over at that show. They talked about this about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, of now everything's on a level playing field. Now the South doesn't have a supreme advantage when it comes around to throwing around cash over the North. The Big Ten schools now, because we got to include USC, that's in the South technically, there are Big Ten schools now with large alumni bases, with large donor bases. Like, look at what Ohio State did to put a championship level team on the football field this year. Look at what the money that Oregon spent this year. You have Big Ten schools that are spending as much or more than Southern SEC schools. And the shift in recruiting is happening slowly but surely. I talked about that sometime this offseason with Max Torres, a Scoop Duck of On3. I said, some of these changes, I was talking about it related to Oregon, some of these changes aren't going to happen overnight, but they're going to happen incrementally. And the more that these changes happen, I think the more it's going to shift towards the Big Ten. The Big Ten is going to continue to get more talented. The Big Ten is going to continue to get deeper, and it's going to continue to get more competitive. You look at this class, it's all about the quarterback position. It's all about bringing in top level, elite level talent. The Big Ten is certainly laying the groundwork for some of these teams to have high level talent at the most important position on the football field, of course, that being the quarterback position. This is extremely exciting news for those of you in Maize and Blue country. And the graphic I just showed about the talent that is coming into the Big Ten is certainly exciting for all of us here in Big Ten country. Signing day is weeks away. You got to imagine some of those Big Ten schools are going to continue to rise up the recruiting rankings. And you got to imagine the Michigan Wolverines are going to be working the phones. They're going to be working those deals to rise up those rankings, rise up in the top 10 as well once we get to signing day. Those are my thoughts on all of this. I want to hear your thoughts on the Bryce Underwood flip from LSU to Michigan. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.